Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. We're going to give everyone a minute or two to go ahead and get settled, join us. So if you need to grab a glass of water, a snack, feel free to go ahead and do that, and then we'll get started in about a minute or two. All right, it looks like we have a good stream of folks coming in here. We'll give it about another 15, 20 seconds, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, welcome everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited for this conversation that we're going to be having. So I thought we would get started and kick off with a round of introductions. So hi everyone, my name is Bridget Moran. I'm our content manager here at CourseDog. So all things content research related, that is what I'm focusing on. Really excited for the conversation we're going to be having today. And I'll kick it over to Mara to introduce herself.
Thanks, Bridget. Hi, everyone. Really excited to chat today. My name is Mara. I've been at CourseDog almost 4 years now, have had a number of different roles and worn a number of different hats, but more recently, the last year or so, have been a product manager for our scheduling and our analytics tools. So I'm very excited to chat about how we can leverage insights to fuel student-centric scheduling today. And I'll pass it over to Lee.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lee Babin. I am the Interim Director of Institutional Research and Effectiveness at Fletcher Technical Community College. It's a rural college in South Louisiana. We serve about 3,000 credit students and about somewhere over 5,000 total students with non-credit and adult education.
Great. Thanks, Lee. Well, before we kind of get into everything, I want to provide a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about today. So we'll begin by starting off and looking at some of the pressures that institutions are facing that really call for better data and analytics, particularly when it comes to scheduling. Then we'll look at what metrics and sources can be used to inform scheduling analytics. And then finally, we'll look at how scheduling analytics can help you optimize your course schedule and make it more student-centric. And as for the format that we'll be using today, Mara and I have prepared some content that we'll be sharing with you all. But throughout those slides, we'll also be asking Lee to weigh in and share his experiences, particularly from that practitioner's perspective of working in higher ed. And then, of course, at the end, we'll leave time for questions. If you do have a question that comes up during the presentation, feel free to go ahead and either drop that in the chat or the Q&A function, and we'll do our best to either get to it then or maybe leave it towards the end of the presentation when we have our Q&A session. The only other thing I'll note is we will be conducting a few polls throughout today's session, and definitely looking forward to getting everyone's perspective on the issues that we'll be discussing. One last final thing I did want to note is we will be sending out the slides and the recording of this presentation afterwards. So you will have access to that for your records, or if you want to share with your colleagues or anything like that. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into things. So as I just mentioned, we'll start off by talking about some of the newer urgencies when it comes to creating the class schedule. We'll talk about some of the challenges that are associated with historical scheduling processes and how those impact both students and institutions. Mara and I spend a lot of time talking to folks across higher ed about their scheduling practices and some of the pain points that they experience. And I highlighted just a few of the common themes that we hear here. And we hear these from institutions of all shapes and sizes. We hear a lot, but I think one common theme really comes out across these comments, and that's that current scheduling practices often really aren't working for students. Whether this is not having enough courses or sections available for students, or perhaps those sections, are offered at overlapping times. In other cases, some students might not even know how to find the courses that they need. And this is really just a small sampling of what we hear. And we know that these problems, certainly aren't unique to what's on the slide and to those of us that are on the line right now. When we talk to institutions, one of the first questions I like to ask is, how do you create your course schedule? And the most frequent response we get is that, we roll over the course schedule and then make any small adjustments as needed. While this is definitely understandable, unfortunately, this no longer meets the needs of many students. Rolling over schedules fails to take into account new trends, such as which programs are becoming more popular and which are becoming less in demand. In fact, just earlier this year, we conducted a survey with College Pulse, and this survey asked students, how frequently do you experience difficulty enrolling in the classes that you need? And 6 in 10 students said that they experienced difficulty enrolling in classes that they need. Aside from meeting student need, rolling over the schedule doesn't really do much to address errors or conflicts from the previous term schedule. One registrar told me, rolling over the schedule means rolling over problems. And of course, no schedule is going to be perfect, but it does seem like there's a lot of correction that goes on after the fact. ACRO found that 99% of institutions have to make changes to the course schedule after it's published. About a third of institutions make changes to 10 to 20% of their schedules after it's published, and over a quarter of institutions make changes to 20% or more of their schedule after it's published. So this is pretty significant. And finally, any adjustments made from previous terms are often made based on guesses and preferences, rather than based on data or student need. The same ACRO survey found that faculty availability and faculty preference were the top 2 factors when it came to creating the course schedule. And I know that many institutions experience these challenges, and they definitely aren't alone. So Lee, I would love to get you to weigh in here. Could you tell us more about the challenges that, you all been facing at Fletcher and why this led you to pursue a new analytics strategy, particularly when it came to scheduling?
Okay, well, some of the problems that we had, that you just addressed, one of them is that we based our scheduling on a rollover schedule. And part of that was because basically none of the departments were really talking to each other whenever it came to it. Scheduling would be done through the banner system. And how the process of that would be that each of the department schedulers or the deans would basically put together their own departmental schedule, what they wanted to produce for classes, when, and because they're not talking to each other, they have no way of knowing when others are scheduling, other than that rolled over schedule that it was the way it was scheduled before. So I think that was one of the big issues there, is that scheduling wasn't ever based on need. It wasn't ever based on desire of the students. It was based on, well, this is the absolute fastest way that we can get it done in this tight window of time, with all of the other situations of scheduling through banner that is a bit laborious. And I guess another thing, as another point, was that also that not only was scheduling a problem for us, whenever it came to just basic analytics, but curriculum also had some situations where curricular decisions were being made because that's what we think, anecdotal, I guess you could say in that case, that it was the biggest driving point to why some curricular decisions were made.
Definitely. Thanks for sharing, Lee. And Yeah, I think we're going to get into that more later on in the presentation, kind of about that, guessing versus data informed decision making process. And I'm also really glad you brought up the student need part of that, since I think that's something we spend a lot of time thinking about and ties really well into this next slide we have here. And that is, what is the student impact? So the student complaints that you see highlighted here on this slide shows what can happen when the schedule isn't aligned with student needs. So as we mentioned, schedules might be rolled from one year to the next with little insight into how student demand is changing. Or, perhaps schedules are created from scratch each year based on the guesses and preferences of academic departments, like Lee just mentioned. So oftentimes what this can result in is, the same courses don't offer enough sections each year. And then students wonder, why aren't we able to enroll in these classes that we need? Or perhaps classes aren't offered at times that work for the majority of student schedules. For example, students with jobs or caretaking responsibilities often have different times that they're available at. And I'm sure all of you on the line could probably add to the list of complaints that you see on this slide and really come up with your own list. And I know a lot of times, this data can seem pretty anecdotal, but there really is a real impact to all of this. The College Pulse study that we conducted earlier this year found that 1 in 3 first-year students would consider leaving their institution if they can't access the classes they need. And this is really pretty huge. And I think that, outside of just first year students, all students were really feeling the impact of this. So the survey found that 1 in 5 students said they would consider leaving their institution if they can't access the classes they need. So I'd love to hear how this is playing out at your institution. So we're going to go ahead and do our first poll here, which we can go ahead and launch. We'd love to hear the most common reason that students at your institution are unable to access the courses they need. And I know that, we could probably go ahead and select all of these, but I would love to hear, which one kind of rises to the top, what's most urgent here. So that's why we have the single choice selection. So we'll go ahead and leave this open for about 45 to 60 seconds to let everyone get their responses in. All right, see the responses rolling in here. We'll give it around another 15 seconds or so for folks that haven't selected their choice yet. Okay, so we just closed the poll and everyone should be able to go ahead and see the results here. Okay, so this is pretty interesting. It looks like there are a couple that rose to the top here. So the first being the class is already full when trying to enroll. Yep, so those overfilled sections, that's something we're going to be talking about later. So glad to see that we'll be able to address that. And then the second one here, class not offered at a time that works for the student schedule. Yep, that's another really common one we hear. Particularly, as I mentioned, oftentimes students have those competing responsibilities. They might have a job, caretaking responsibilities, lots of things going on in their life, which can make it challenging to fit courses around there. Mara, anything else you would add here to these poll results? Anything stand out to you?
Yeah, so I'd say the fact that class is already full when students are trying to enroll being the number one reason that we're seeing here for students having difficulty accessing the classes they need is not really surprising to me in my work implementing our analytics solution with Fletcher and other institutions. Really, the intention of it is to break out of that cycle of just rolling over your schedule term over term over term, which really results in hidden demand. We don't get to surface the insights that students need, specific courses that may be recently added to program requirements or that aren't offered every term and are really necessary for them to progress in their degree. So know that you're not alone. It's something that we see a lot and are definitely working to address with insights and analytics. So I'd love to also take a look at what the data actually says. And so overall, the majority of students experience challenges trying to enroll in the classes that they need, which we just discussed. And as we mentioned previously, 6 out of 10 students said that they frequently or somewhat frequently experience issues trying to enroll in the classes that they need to meet either major or general education requirements. However, only 11% of students said that they never experience issues trying to enroll in the classes that they need to continue to progress in their degree. So you'll see that the results vary slightly between students at 2-year and 4-year institutions. However, overall, students most frequently encountered issues when a class was already full or a class was not offered at a time that worked for their schedule. So really what we can conclude from this is that this suggests that the schedule isn't always built with student needs at the forefront, which anecdotally I know a lot of us are already aware of. And this can really mean several different things. So if 3 in 5 students find that classes are already full when they're trying to enroll, this suggests a problem with overfilled sections where there aren't enough seats to meet student demand. This can happen for several different reasons. Maybe you don't have enough instructional resources, or maybe you don't have access to the right data to determine student demand in advance. Other barriers students encounter include the class was offered at the same time as another class that they needed to take, or the class was not offered for the term that they were trying to take it in. So I know these challenges play out differently at each institution. Lee, I'd love to understand and hear what challenges students at Fletcher were experiencing with the course schedule and how this was impacting them.
Yeah, so I mean, looking at this list here, I mean, it's definitely something that all of them in some way or another are affect our students. You know, like I said, we're a 2-year technical community college. We serve a commuter population. Over a third of our students are by traditional age, non-traditional students. And of our ones in the traditional age, more than 50% of them have some kind of check marks on the non-traditional scale. So we have the vast majority of our students are in some way working full-time jobs, caretakers of their or children or parents or something like that. So for them, the window of opportunity for classes is sometimes problematic. And we also had a double whammy of not only did we get hit by the pandemic, but also a major hurricane came through and damaged our facilities. So we were in the situation of suddenly having a lot less space to be able to offer classes. So, you know, with all these things said, you know, one of our biggest problems here is our students have such a tight window of opportunity to come in person and take classes that whenever we have classes that just don't mesh well with their schedules, then of course we can't keep those students. They can't come here. They can't schedule classes. So, you know, even if they don't go to another institution, they're not advancing in their, well, especially if they don't go to another institution, they can't advance in their education. So it is definitely a problem for us in that case that, you know, when our schedule is not talking to what the students' needs are, that we can check that off. And I noticed like the 55% for classes not offered at a time that work for my schedule, I would say that would be the number one choice by students here also.
Really, really appreciate you sharing that. And I think it's so important as we have these discussions to also ground it in really the student experiences that are on campus, those non-traditional backgrounds, and really think about which groups of students are most impacted by the inefficient production of schedules that don't take into account that student need. So I think those are all really spot on points. So one of the other things is that students aren't the only ones that feel the effect of poorly optimized course schedules. Institutions, as I'm sure all of you are aware, also feel the pressure, especially in terms of resources, very much as a puzzle. And so if a large part of the schedule is made up of underfilled sections, this takes up a disproportionate amount of instructional resources and space. In the same vein, the combination of resources needed to maintain low demand sections, along with additional resources needed for areas of high growth, can lead to a rising cost per student that similarly impacts the student experience and their likelihood to continue on for their degree. And finally, for those areas with growing demand, it can be difficult to find the space and resources to keep up. And so outside of the impact on students and institutions, the sector as a whole is really facing new pressures. What once worked is no longer enough to meet student preferences and keep up with changing trends. We know there are several reasons why we see these changes are happening across the sector. I think by now, no one needs to be reminded of the coming demographic cliff. This reduction in the population of traditional age students has increased competition among institutions for these students. Simultaneously, our definition of what traditional students look like is changing. Students are more likely to be older, have a job, come from low-income families, or from communities of color. And while this comes different expectations from students and what they seek from higher ed. So aside from demographics, student preferences are changing, and there's increased skepticism of the value of higher ed. According to a survey recently published by EAB, the percentage of high school students who say college isn't worth it has grown from 8% in 2019 to 20% in 2023. The public is also increasingly skeptical, and many state legislatures are passing new performance-based funding metrics. This all points to a need to evaluate every aspect of how we serve students, including how well they're able to access the courses that they need. For our next section, I want to take a look at what exactly we mean by scheduling analytics. I know this is a very, very broad term, and so I want to dig in here to help ground it. So we'll look at some of the historical data sources that can inform analytics, as well as some of the more forward-looking sources, such as data from degree audits and program maps. Bridget, I think you're on mute there.
Thanks, Mara. I just got a little too eager there. But yes, as I was saying, there really is so much data we can use to help, build our schedule and put student needs first. And we've listed out just a few of the metrics here on this slide. So first, course distribution throughout the day and week. I'm sure you've all experienced pain points here. Classes are packed between 10 and 2, and faculty might be reluctant to teach outside of these areas, even if that's when student needs to take their courses. I was talking with one administrator the other day, and she told me there was a student working in her office that told her she couldn't work on Tuesday and Thursday. And she's like, why is that? That's, 2 full days. And the student told her that, it's because all the classes I need to take are only offered on Tuesday and Thursday. So I'm jam-packed in classes all day long. And I think course distribution is also important in the context of program maps. For example, if a student signs up for a program with the expectation that they'll take all of their classes at night, all those courses need to be offered at night as they progress. So they shouldn't complete 2 terms and then only find out as they attempt to register for the 3rd term that none of the classes they need are offered at night. Course and section fill rates are another important metric to examine, and something that we'll be talking about more in depth later. Particularly for those popular GE courses or milestone courses, institutions should be looking to see if all of those sections are, consistently at capacity. And this might be an indication that not all students are able to access the courses that they need. I won't go over every individual data point here because I know it's a lot, but I think the questions listed on this slide are a good starting point to see if students indeed can access all the courses they need as they progress. And all those data points that we had listed on the previous slide, I think are great starting points, but historically, there's always been a bit of guesswork when it comes to creating the course schedule. So as we mentioned, faculty availability and faculty preference are often the top 2 factors when creating the course schedule. And using these factors often means that the schedule is more centered on faculty needs as opposed to student needs. Additionally, looking at data from previous term schedules gives an incomplete picture of how student demand may be changing, or perhaps how it was never met in the first place. More forward-looking data, such as degree audit data, can help institutions see into the future and assess which courses students still need to take. It can also help scheduling teams see which courses are critical for students to complete their program versus where they might have a little bit of wiggle room when it comes to creating the schedule. So Lee, I know that this is an issue that you have felt acutely at Fletcher. You mentioned to me that, in the past, the schedule was often created not based on what you needed to know, but what on your guessing you need to do. So I'd love to hear kind of your perspective on this. How will analytics and that degree audit data help you create a better course schedule?
Yeah, some of the things that you're talking about here about the historical scheduling sources of, one thing that was the beginning of the scheduling process was asking faculty, when do you want to teach? So if 100% of faculty say from, I'll just use a very small window from 8 to 10 a.m., then that was when we would, for the most part, offer classes. And I wasn't exclusively that, but just as an example. But one thing that was true is that most of the people wanted morning classes. Not so many wanted late afternoon classes. And then in our scheduling situation, one thing that we would find is there was a bit of a bottleneck of our scheduling. So a type of audit in there, in using degree audits would tell us a few things. For example, as opposed to what our curriculum maps would show, what kinds of schedules the students were actually taking. So that's one of the big things that we want as a talking point, is to know that we're scheduling for what the students are actually doing rather than just what we think they should be doing. I mean, there's some data for advising the students in certain ways, like get them to get their early Englishes and maths out of the way, and then jump into their other general education courses and then program courses. But we definitely, I guess it's always like we didn't know what we needed to know. And that's the main reason we need the analytics, the buzzword of database decision making. We want to make the right decisions because we know they're the right decisions, not because we think they're the right decisions. I hope that's
Absolutely.
answering that question. If I
Yeah.
need to input something else, please let me know.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Lee. And as I mentioned earlier, if anyone has any, follow-up questions about the slides or anything Lee said, feel free to drop those in the chat in the Q&A, and we'll go ahead and get to those. But I want to go ahead and get to another poll now. I'd love to kind of get a baseline feel of, where everyone in the line is at. Would love to hear from you all. How many of you are using data from your, degree audit sources to help inform the course schedule? I'll be super curious to see where we end up here. So again, we'll leave this open for about 45 seconds or so to give everyone a chance to go ahead and select their answer here. All right, let's give it another 10 seconds or so. So if you haven't had a chance to input your answer, now's the time. Okay, so it looks like the poll results are live here. Interesting breakdown here. So about half said no, they currently don't use degree audit data. So definitely an area of opportunity. And then we have almost 20% at yes, and another third at unsure, which is pretty interesting. Mara, any thoughts here kind of about how that compares to what you've seen out there?
Yeah, well, I'm definitely very impressed by those that are indicating that they are using degree audit. I know it's not necessarily an easy feat to start to incorporate that into your scheduling process. And for those who haven't yet, you're definitely not alone. It's something that we talk about very constantly with our partners. I'd say what we tend to often hear is that many institutions do leverage historical enrollment data, but we really see that as just one piece of the puzzle. So historical trends definitely speak to future enrollment, but we also really want to be able to look at your actual student body, where they are in their requirements, what they've already met, and then based on program maps that you also are either generating via CourseDog or looking at what program maps you're sharing with students, your advisors are sharing with students, be able to predict what they'll take next. And in doing that, also meet that demand with supply and with offering those classes.
And Mara, I thought it was interesting here that, about a third of folks said unsure. Who at an institution would you typically advise those folks to reach out to see if they are in fact leveraging that degree audit data? Who is typically the one who is handling that and might be using it in the schedule making process?
I definitely think it's something that departmental schedulers, those who are setting the enrollment capacities, determining what classes are going to be offered, the registrar at your institution, tends to differ between schools that have centralized versus distributed scheduling processes, but typically those that are more involved in actually building the schedule should be aware of the processes that go into deciding what classes to be offered in each term.
Awesome. Thanks, Mara. Well, let's go ahead and take a closer look at some of those more forward scheduling sources that we just talked about. So first, degree audit data. I think you can probably all tell, but we are very enthusiastic about this. I think this is really a great data source because it allows you to see where your current students are at in real time. So first, you can see which requirements students have already met, and then which courses they have already taken to meet those requirements. And perhaps even more importantly, degree audit data allows institutions to see which requirements students still need to meet, and therefore which classes they're likely to register for in the future. And I know this sounds all well and good, but as we've seen, this is definitely an area of opportunity for many institutions. I think not just those on the line, but also confirmed by a survey that ACRO did last year, specifically about degree audit solutions. And they found that only 1 in 3 undergraduate institutions had a significant or modest analytic strategy when it came to degree audit data. And this number was even fewer when it came to graduate or professional schools, with only 23% saying they had a significant or modest strategy here. I'd also like to take a second to talk about program map data and what exactly that means. So looking at past course sequences of graduated students can help institutions infer what their program maps may look like. So based on data from students that have previously enrolled in a given program, this allows institutions to see which courses and in what sequence successful students have taken these courses. And this isn't helpful for just creating program maps, but also for informing the course schedule. It gives institutions a better idea of which courses students are likely to take in a future term to meet requirements. And it can also help give a better idea of which term a student is likely to take that certain course. We'll talk about this a little bit more in our next section, and specifically what this means for program maps. For our final section here, we're going to take a look at some of the more practical applications when it comes to scheduling analytics. So we'll look at how scheduling analytics can help identify where additional sections are needed to meet student demand, which, as our poll showed, it is definitely an area it seems like we're all eager to learn more about. And then we'll also look at where there might be opportunities to consolidate, or perhaps maybe even in some cases cancel low demand sections and make better use of resources. We'll also walk through identifying conflicts in the schedule to make sure that requirements that are frequently taken the same term aren't scheduled at the same time. And then finally, we'll return to how scheduling data and analytics can help institutions build out those program maps and make sure that they're really informed by those student success outcomes. So we'll go ahead and launch our final poll here, again, tying back to that degree audit data. So I know that most of you, it sounds like, aren't using degree audit data, but for those of you that are, would love to hear, how are you using it to help inform the course schedule? What types of decisions are you making? Oh, and it seems like we might have snuck in this untitled question here, so you can go ahead and ignore that one and just go ahead and select for the first one. All right, just another 10, 15 seconds, then we can go ahead and close the poll and share it to everyone. All right, I think we can probably go ahead and close the poll and share it. Okay, let's see here. So I know we have quite the list here, and as I mentioned, it looks like you know, a lot of folks currently aren't using this data, but for folks that are, definitely thank you for contributing here. So it looks like some of the top responses here were informing which courses are offered. Yep, informing how many sections to offer. And then it looks like maybe less so on some of the other ones here. Mara, any thoughts, reactions here?
Yeah, so I'd say this isn't necessarily a trick question, but I think it does demonstrate that there is a wide applicability of how degree audit data can be used to inform student-centric scheduling, really with the outset of the scheduling process, so determining what classes to offer, which ones may no longer be relevant. And then once you actually determine the courses, the number of sections and seats, you can also look at what classes students are likely to take and then dive into what conflicts could be occurring within the actual meeting patterns that are assigned to those sections. So degree audit data is really a powerful driver of that student-centric scheduling process. So moving on, would love to talk about overfilled sections. I think this is really another area that institutions can look to in their scheduling process, both as an opportunity to help support student success, but then also to optimize your resources. So there's no one definition of what makes a section overfilled, but most definitions that you find out there define it as a section that is more than 80% full. So 80% of that enrollment cap has been signed up for by students. The reason it isn't 100% is to give some wiggle room for late additions, transfer students, or other edge cases that you might see. There are a few different ways of assessing overfilled sections. Historically, which sections have been overfilled? Looking forward, based on degree audit data, how many students still need to take a given course? Or based on students' anticipated degree path, how many students are projected to take the course for the upcoming term? When thinking about how to address these overfilled sections, there are a few questions to consider. So when you're looking to meet demand, can you set up shadow sections and quickly open them during registration if enrollment thresholds in other sections are met? And when projecting demand, is your data accurate? So are max enrollment capacities from previous terms an accurate depiction of how many seats a given section holds? Or are the caps artificially adjusted to meet faculty preference, such as for a certain room? Considering data points such as these and addressing overfilled sections has numerous benefits, both for students and for institutions. Better course access accelerates time to completion and keeps students on track with productive credits. So Lee, one thing that I know you've mentioned in our conversations is that Fletcher has struggled with bottlenecks and students not being able to complete all of their classes in a timely manner. How are you planning to address bottlenecks with scheduling analytics?
Yeah, well, one aspect of something that we're experiencing right now that we're looking for a solution for is our nursing and allied health students. About 30% of our total student body is made up of those either in a program or attempting to get in a program. And for all of those students, they have to take a sequence of biology courses. And one thing that we've noticed as an example is that those biology courses are not always offered with either the correct number of sections that are needed to fulfill those students. And another problem is that with the prerequisite portions of the courses, they're not necessarily offered in the right sequence of order for those students to get in a timely way to be able to be finished in time to apply for clinicals. So in this case, for the analytics, one thing that we're basically hoping to address is that we can push that data out to schedulers, you know, flashing lights or whatever needs to be done to get it out there to them to say, hey, look, this is what it's showing. You know, we're offering one section of this course that 150 people need, and we don't have any classrooms that fit 150 people. You know, we might have 30 people maximum in a classroom. So that would be like the biggest factor there is that by pushing this data out to our schedulers and allowing them to see it, then they know exactly how many courses they need to schedule and when they need to schedule based on that information. So that is the biggest portion of us, and I think that's the biggest the biggest pain point for our students right now related to that is especially in our nursing and allied health programs.
Mhm. And I think you make a really great point, Lee, and something that probably many of you on the line are thinking about is that being able to integrate this into the actual scheduling process is the only way you're going to ensure success of leveraging analytics. And oftentimes what we talk about with institutions is that change management process. It's difficult to get schedulers who have been scheduling a certain way for many, many years to adjust their processes and to start to leverage new inputs. And so one of the things that we've been working with Lee on is getting his feedback specifically around how can we integrate this into the scheduling process, surface this so that it's right in front of the schedulers' fingertips when they are building that schedule to make it really, really easy to integrate into that scheduling process. And so really thinking about the end users, the department schedulers is at the forefront because they're really the ones that need to leverage this on a daily basis, which will then trickle down to positively impact students. So when we're looking at consolidating sections, really on the flip side, there are often these opportunities to combine sections, or in some cases to even cancel sections that are under-enrolled. Of course, just because a section is under-enrolled doesn't mean it should automatically be consolidated or canceled, but it is an opportunity for a discussion around resource allocation. So institutions should ask questions such as, is this course necessary to support student degree programs? Can sections offered multiple times a year be offered less frequently? And if you do offer it less frequently, which term would impact the fewest students if you stopped offering it? Once relevant sections are consolidated or canceled, this is where institutions can start seeing that value. So an adjunct instructor may not need to be hired anymore, or full-time faculty can be reassigned to courses with higher demand. Additionally, space freed up from the consolidated or canceled sections can be used to offer more sections of high demand courses in order to meet that student need. So this is huge from both a financial perspective, but also from a space resource perspective. Aside from addressing under and overfilled sections, addressing time conflicts in the course schedule is another area critical to student progression. As we mentioned earlier, 2 out of 5 students have struggled to get into a class that they need because it was offered at the same time as another class that they needed to take. So when scheduling a course, administrators should consider what other courses students are likely going to take in that same term in order to ensure that they are scheduled at distributed times and the student can then complete a full schedule of enrolling in the classes that they actually need. And then for student-centric scheduling, determining what classes to offer in order to help students progress towards their degree is really the first piece of the puzzle, while ensuring those classes are offered at times students can enroll is the second. So heat maps, such as the one shown on the left side of the slide, help show administrators times where there is a high likelihood of conflict. So areas where other classes that we know students are likely going to take are offered at, so that we can then go ahead and schedule around those. And this really helps show administrators times where those conflicts are likely to occur in the dark red versus times with a lower chance of conflict, which is demonstrated by the light yellow. So I want to close out today by talking about how student audit data can help build successful program maps. Looking at student audit and success data, institutions can gain insight into what successful program maps look like. This data looks at the historical degree audit data of students who successfully completed the program. This helps administrators build program maps that take into account considerations such as which courses are most popular for students to take to meet a given requirement, which sequences of courses are most likely to lead to success, when milestone courses should be taken, and which courses should be taken together in a given term. On the flip side, it is also beneficial to analyze the schedules of students that did not successfully complete the program and transferred to another program. So this really helps administrators understand where students are more likely to struggle. And this could include courses where students frequently struggle, course combinations with poor success metrics, and where students are most likely to stop out of a program. So building these program maps predicated on successful completions doesn't just give students a helpful roadmap, it also helps schedulers understand what courses and how many sections they should offer each term to meet the needs of students following these paths. So Lee, I know you've spent a lot of time thinking about how to help students build a successful course schedule. This means both showing successful pathways and offering the right courses in the right terms. Can you share a little bit more about how you're approaching this?
Yeah, well, and from a personal standpoint, I guess one of the portions of being the project manager of our implementation of CourseDog is that we're going to have some targeted training sessions for our department schedulers and our deans in conjunction with our registrar, who's in charge of organizing the scheduling processes, that it'll be another portion of that, is that we get it out there, let them see what the data is, what it means, what it's telling them, make it, something that they can easily, basically digest and be able to use it to their advantage. And for that, we're going to heavily discourage the rollover scheduling. That's something that we're going to say is it should not be an option anymore. Look at the data first, determine if your scheduling matters. Changes based on what you see. And if you can see in front of you that it should change, then change it. Don't go with what's comfortable, go with what is necessary. So that's one of those things. So from my standpoint, one of the things to make sure that we're offering the students the best chance to match some of our goals of higher retention rates and higher completion rates is to make sure that the schedule is what's needed for them to be able to do that, and that we're offering everything that their program is deeming necessary. And as a third aspect of that our general education courses are not conflicting directly with other major courses and both in the sequence and the time and availability of the classes. So those are some things that we're doing. It's a lot of things that we're doing, but it's all coming down to using that data-driven decision making to get us where we need to be.
I think that makes a ton of sense, and definitely really looking forward to meeting with your team members. I know one thing I mentioned earlier was that change management process, and I think being able to really sit down with those end users, talk about why we are starting to incorporate this data-centric approach is really important to getting buy-in and helping everyone understand specifically why we are doing what we are. So I know we have a Q&A question. I think we'll be getting to that shortly, and then definitely can go ahead and answer that question, Rosie. So before moving on to Q&A, I do want to quickly cover how CourseDog can help your institution create a student-centric schedule. So CourseDog empowers academic administrators to support on-time completions and operational excellence with integrated academic and event scheduling, course demand projections, curriculum management, and online catalog solutions through a single bidirectional integration with your SIS. CourseDog is highly configurable, enabling institutions to support their unique business processes while implementing general best practices. And our newest product, Academic Operations Analytics, really gets to the heart of our mission. Scheduling analytics uncovers hidden insights for institutions and ensures that the number of seats and sections offered align with student demand. It also makes guided recommendations around when to offer the sections to avoid scheduling conflicts that could impact a student's degree progress. Curriculum analytics helps institutions to build clear pathways and make decisions that ensures their curriculum is financially sustainable.
All right, thanks, Mara. Well, I think we can go ahead and kick off the Q&A part of today's conversation. So if anyone has a question, please feel free to go ahead and drop that in the Q&A section of this. It can be for me, Mara, Lee, any question you have, feel free to add in there. But it looks like we have one that's here, so we can kind of start off with that. Mara, I'll direct this to you. So someone has a question. They said that their institution uses UAchieve for degree audit, and they're wondering about kind of the ability to integrate that with CourseDog, and if that's something that would be possible.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really great question. So we do have two different approaches to leveraging course demand projections, the module. So one is that audit projection approach, which is pretty much what we talked about today. There is a secondary approach if your institution, for whatever reason, didn't want to go down the path of actually integrating with our audit data or your audit data. And what that would look like is a student class history approach. So we still would require a certain level of integration to obtain your student data. But what we would then be looking at is comparing what classes your students have taken, that class history, and comparing it to program maps that you build out in our module as well. So I know a lot of this is pretty high level. I think it would make more sense when you also have the opportunity to look at the UI and we really talk through with a partner, what that would look like for your institutions. Definitely encourage you to get in touch after, and we could talk through those specifics. But the short answer is there is an alternative approach, that class history approach, to leveraging degree audit data.
All right. It looks like another question from Mara here. I'll go ahead and let you answer that one.
I like that question. So I did graduate in 2019, so 4 years ago now, a little over 4 years ago now. And can confirm I did have scheduling issues. There were a number of classes that were the more popular classes on campus, those ones with lecturers that I was really excited about, or the ones with curriculum that weren't necessarily in my major, but would meet general education requirements that I really wanted to take. And oftentimes they were already full by the time I was able to enroll. I know particularly as an underclassman that affected me more often than not, because there was those windows of time when upperclassmen could enroll first, but definitely was something that I experienced as a senior too. And so I'd say getting into higher education really made a lot of sense for my background. I've always been really excited about helping to democratize access to higher ed, including supporting different student outcomes. And so I've had a lot of different roles at CourseDog, but definitely I'd say my favorite one has been working on the analytics product specifically, because it's very easy, I think, to see how the tool that we're building actually then is going to impact those, not just students getting into the classes that they need, but then also graduating as well. Something that's very exciting to me and related to my experience.
Awesome. Well, if anyone else has any questions, feel free to drop those in the Q&A, and we'll leave it open for another minute or two. But if not, we will go ahead and wrap up fairly soon. All right, well, it looks like we don't have anything else coming in. So we do have one final poll question here. This is just kind of for our own internal knowledge. You know, we won't be sharing the poll results publicly. But if you have any questions, or if we can provide you any more information, particularly on the scheduling and analytics front, feel free to let us know and we can reach out. But if not, we want to thank everyone for joining us today. Really enjoyed this conversation. Particularly, I want to thank Lee for joining us, for taking the time to share his insights and his invaluable expertise. So thank you so much, Lee, for joining us today, and hope we will see you all in our next webinar. All right. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.